Watch This Week in Missouri Politics, Sunday mornings at 11 on ABC 30.
And welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics. It's now time for our Opinion Maker panel. We're joined this week by former State Auditor Susan Montee, Representative from West St. Louis County, Shamed Dogan, his first term, Senator Gina Walsh from here in St. Louis County, and Senator Ryan Silvey, one of these. We had an active senator on earlier. We have maybe the second most active senator in the body on with us, and Senator Silvey. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And I want to start with you. You just heard your colleague, Senator Kehoe, talk about several topics. What jumped out to you?
The Tesla thing is kind of interesting. What that fight is happening across the country in the various states and kind of how it's playing out here. And, the technology that's involved, the models of sales that are involved. And, as far as I'm concerned, I think everybody needs to play by the same rules. If we need to have a debate on what those rules are, I think that's appropriate. But until we have that, I think everybody needs to play by the same rules.
Senator Walsh, I'd really be interested in your opinion on this. I think he makes an interesting point. There's rules that are set up. If you want to change them, that's your prerogative as a legislator.
Absolutely, and that's why we are in those chambers. That's what our job is. And the franchise law is there to level the playing field for everyone. We haven't addressed any of the issues that you have to ship your car to Chicago to be repaired. What about all those jobs in Kansas City, in St. Louis, and in between that won't be happening for an auto dealer that wants to come here and have a different set of rules? We don't have a different set of rules for other industries in the states. We have these laws, and we have them to level the playing fields so that everybody's treated fairly. And that's what this is all about, fairness.
Susan Montee, you've been in the executive branch, you've been the state auditor. Was it sometimes tempting for you to maybe pick the laws you wanted to enforce and maybe not be as interested in the others?
Well, it's always tempting, but the real concern that we have is that regardless of whether you agree with what the legislature comes up with, and certainly I don't agree with it a lot, that is where our lawmaking power is. And the law on these car manufacturers and dealers is that very clearly manufacturers can't sell direct to customers. They have to sell through a dealer. So what's happened here is the Department of Revenue has found a way to let Tesla have a dealer license. And it takes a pretty strong analysis of the rules in order to make that happen. And I think one of the things that you talked about with Senator Kehoe is that the Department of Revenue has a history of making some kind of interpretations in ways that the legislature didn't intend, whether it was scanning ID documents for concealed carry or the fee office kickback of fees for bidding contracts that Senator Silvey and Senator Walsh are carrying. So we've seen this with the Department of Revenue anyway.
Representative Dogan, the transportation thing's interesting. Senator Kehoe's been a leader in that. He had a plan. It did not pass last year. You weren't part of making that plan. You're a freshman legislator. You just came into office. Do you see problems in transportation, and any part of what the senator said appeal to you about how to solve them?
I definitely think the need for transportation upgrade in Missouri is real. It's one of the few things that I think we do have a legitimate state government purpose for, unlike a lot of the things that the state legislature tries to spend money on. So I think that we do need to, going forward, look at different ways to find a solution for that funding. And I'm open to all the different solutions that have been put on the table. I think the sales tax is pretty much dead in the water. The voters spoke pretty loud and clear on that. But other ways, we've got to look at those and see if they make economic sense.
So this week, busy week in the legislature. Senator Walsh, across the chamber, the House passed right to work. I assume that you've got your tennis shoes on, ready to stop any right to work bill that was passed.
I have. Not to share with you my legislative strategy for the floor.
Oh, just with us, just
among friends. But I'll say this: states that have passed, it's proven that states who have passed right to work laws, their household income is over $500 more a month less. They spend over $3,000 less on each child in education. It's an unfair law. I thought when I went to the Senate that I would be in a place where we didn't make laws that were addressed to 12% of the population in this state. We have a lot of important things to do there in that building, and I don't think this is one of them. And everything I've read since yesterday, I don't know how much of an appetite there is in the Senate for this to become law. when we'll see, it'll come to, I'll have to tell you this, I do not read these bills till they get to the Senate because we do, Senator Sylvie can tell you, our workload is very heavy. So I know what these laws say. I kind of have an idea about each one of them that went through the chambers last week. So that's what I will do Monday. I'll start reading up on the bills that will be in our small business committee next week or the week after. They've been assigned, but they have not been noticed up.
Senator Sylvie, I think you have a good feel of the pulse of your caucus. I've heard Tom Dempsey say previously this was not a priority piece of legislation. Do you see that changing this year?
You know, clearly there are people in the caucus that want to see it happen. They'd like to see it become law. But when it comes out of the House at 92 and it takes 109 to override a veto, I mean, I think we're all pretty realistic that even if it passes the Senate, it's going to get vetoed. So if you don't have the strength in the House to override the veto, I don't think it's going to get a lot of time in the Senate.
Representative Dogan, do you see this bill coming back to you with a chance to override it?
That's a good question. I don't know the politics in the Senate that well. I know it passed the House with a pretty strong majority, but as Senator Sylvie said, not a veto-proof one. I supported it because I believe that it is the right thing for Missouri in terms of bringing jobs and businesses back to our state that we've lost to 6 of our 8 surrounding states that already have right to work. I just think we have to have that policy in place to keep us competitive on a national scale.
Susan Mondi, there's been always the discussion of this. I don't think it's a realistic thing, most people believe, to override the governor's veto. What about a statewide initiative? You've ran statewide. What do you think the state is on the issue?
Well, I think there is still a continuing place for unions in the state. I think that we recognize the value of being able to get together and collective bargain for workplace safety issues, for wages, and when we take it to the voters in the state, we'll be able to talk about the things that unions still represent. The right to work bills, I think, will be an organizing tool for us. I think people still recognize the value of having a little bit of help for the employees in the state. And if we do away with union representation, it is not a good thing for the state. And as Senator Walsh just told you, the wages are less. There is the states that have a right to work are some of the poorest in the country, and we don't want to join them.
You know, one part of this that seemed a little bit missing, there was not a big outcry from employers who have union workforces saying we want right to work to get rid of these unions.
Oh, that's right. In fact, if you talk to some of our employers that have unions in their workplace, they're very happy to work alongside. It is being pro-union isn't anti-business, and it never has been. And it certainly is an ability for the workers to be able to do things in a more efficient manner and in a meaningful way in order to deal with the managers and the CEOs in these companies. So it certainly isn't something anyone's crying out for, except maybe in the legislature.
Senator Sylvie, speaking of doing things in a new, innovative way, you came out with a program to reform Medicaid with a block grant system. Can you explain to our viewers what that is?
Sure. You know, there's been a lot of discussion over the problems that have been created by the Obamacare law, the coverage gap being one of them. And the way that Washington wanted to do this was just expand Medicaid, just put everybody on Medicaid. Clearly, there's not support for that in the legislature. I don't even support that. It's a broken system. It needs fixed. However, I think that if states are given the flexibility to design their own programs on how it makes sense to take care of their citizens, I think that's probably a way forward. And so what I've proposed is we will take care of that coverage gap if you just give us a block grant. Just let us figure out how we're going to do it. Don't say you can have this federal money if you do this or if you do that. Just say, look, we understand you need to take care of your citizens. You need to close the coverage gap. So here we will help you in doing that and figure it out.
I hear a lot of folks say to me, Republican legislators, we pay the money, we don't like the program, we'd rather not pay the money. We pay the federal taxes, we want the federal benefits. It's hard politically to get there. How do you talk to somebody that's in that spot?
Yeah, I mean, it's an extraordinarily political issue. I mean, everything today is governed in the political arena by sound bites. And you know, you take something like Obamacare, and it polls very, very poorly in the state. So therefore, anything I can call Obamacare is going to poll very poorly. So we're still in the process of trying to get to the policy debate. Once we can get to the policy debate and have everybody on the same page that yes, this is a problem and it needs a solution, then I think we'll start talking about more creative answers.
Senator Walsh, every 2 years, people that go out and say they want to expand Medicaid and people that want to say they want to kill Obamacare go out. Missouri voters elect more of one and less of the other. How do you get around that?
Well, it's interesting. You know, when you call it the National Health Care Act, people think differently about it than when you call it Obamacare. I support Medicaid expansion, but I'm also willing to look. I'm a realist.
What about the Senator's block grant
So
approach?
I'm willing to look at anything that will help ensure the nearly 750,000 Missourians that don't have insurance in this state.
Representative Dogan, is that something you feel as some of your colleagues would like to take advantage of the money Missourians are already paying? They're just not quite sure how politically to get that done.
I think a block grant approach is an interesting one, and I commend Senator Sylvie for introducing that. I know he's working hard on this issue. His heart is in the right place, but I just can't go down the road of expansion, and I think that's going to be a tough sell to a lot of my colleagues, mixing those two concepts, block granting and expansion. We like the one, but we don't necessarily like the other.
Interesting. Susan Monty, you're around the state. What do you hear?
Well, I can tell you this. I was, when I came into office, when the first of the significant Medicaid cuts came into play after Matt Blunt had cut 100,000 people off of Medicaid. The real problem was we've now seen what happened with the people who were cut and the shifting of the burden of dealing with the uninsured. So we had more and more people now showing up in emergency rooms for care. In order to balance out the money that wasn't coming into the hospitals, they had to renegotiate different rates with insurers, which then gets passed to the rest of us who have health insurance, and that's a real big part of why we have to have some kind of health care like the Affordable Care Act. When we come to Medicaid expansion, though, we can look at it in this state and see we've got $2 billion of tax money that is going to other states if we don't expand. And what we're just trying to do is put some of those people who were cut off.
And we'll have to leave it there with cutting those folks off. I'm sure debate will pick up next time.